Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Ukrainian talk show on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and we have today Dr. Jonathan Lockwood. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Thank you, Sasha. Glad to be here as always.
To have you. And our Ivan Kucherenko from Kiev, Ukraine. Welcome to the show, Ivan.
Hello, Sasha. Hello, Jonathan. Glad to be here with you today.
And we know that you have spectacular clip for us to show. Let's start with it.
Let's start with it.
Okay.
Kyiv City, the capital of Ukraine. Now, 2025. Unbelievable.
You are the one. The world is watching you. With every step, with everything you do. Don't let the lines of right and wrong grow thin. The light will always rise, the dark won't win. Donald Trump, it's time to fight in the name of light, in the name of light. Donald Trump, it's time to fight in the name of light, in the name of light. They always lie, they always hide the blame. The throne of Tsar is built on fear and hate. They don't want peace, they want just blood and fire. It's time to crush the evil empire. Donald Trump, it's time to fight in the name of light, in the name of light. Donald Trump, it's time to fight in the name of light, in the name of light.
I will end the war in Ukraine, I will stop the chaos in the Middle East, and I will prevent World War III from happening, and you have no idea how close we are.
All eyes on you, it's time to stop this pain. We pray for peace, here under missile rain. You hold the key, the page is yours to write. And God bless you for bringing peace and light. Donald Trump, it's time to fight in the name of light, in the name of light. Donald Trump, it's time to fight in the name of light, in the name of light. Donald Trump, it's time to fight in the name of light, in the name of light. Donald Trump, it's time to fight in the name of light, in the name of light.
Пожалуйста, спасите її, пожалуйста. За мене можете не переживати.
It's time to fight in the name of light, in the name of light. Donald Trump, it's time to fight in the name of light, in the name of light. Donald Trump, it's time to fight in the name of light, in the name of light. Donald Trump, it's time to fight in the name of light, in the name of light.
Now that is a video, that is a song that deserves to go viral worldwide.
Absolutely.
And the thing that impresses me the most, Ivan, is that song and that message is pitched perfectly to someone like President Trump. That message has an excellent chance of getting through to him and making him, in effect, see the light in much the same way that President Jimmy Carter saw the light after the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan back in 1979. He needs something that will reach him on a subliminal level and emotional level too, emotional and spiritual level, because in President Trump's own words, he believes that God spared him from assassination so that he could save the United States and essentially, in the view of many Christians, fulfill God's larger purpose for his life. This video is, since it is done by obviously a very devout rabbi who sings with conviction. He is not faking it. He is singing with true conviction, and this message and the song are both pitched perfectly to deliver a very strong yet diplomatic. It's not insulting. It's not insulting President Trump. It's not calling him reckless. It's basically the rabbi is recognizing that God has a purpose for President Trump and potentially a very positive purpose in helping to save Ukraine from Russian aggression and subjugation. So I absolutely applaud this video. It is just perfectly delivered. And Ivan, I hope that you can, with whatever connections you have available, get it to the West, get it viral, get it to whatever connections you can that can get this particular video and song viral and spread to the people of the West.
Ivan, please send me the link to that song on email, so then I can
Sure.
understand it.
There you go.
Would be
No.
great.
Sure.
Whatever works best.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just a little bit disappointed that it takes Trump so long to understand, hopefully, really what's happening there.
The fundamental misunderstanding is that, and I see the misunderstanding in his mindset. Remember, he's a businessman. Remember, he's used to deal making. That's his whole framework. He believes he is projecting his mindset onto, unfortunately, his adversaries. He believes that it is possible to make a deal with anyone and everyone. Well, unfortunately, that is not true, because if his advisors had studied the Russian mindset more closely, as I have done over the past several decades, they would realize there is such a thing as a mindset that will not compromise. In the Russian case, they translate their word for compromise, which I remind you, they borrowed from the English language, and they translate compromise as mutual surrender. That, as you and I have discussed before, is a very negative connotation. And the funny thing is, Marco Rubio actually stated, and it's funny in a way because he doesn't realize the full import of what he's saying. He's saying that between Russia and Ukraine, both sides have to be willing to lose something. Both sides have to be willing. And he put his finger on it without realizing it. Yeah, the Russians see it compromise as mutual surrender. And to them, that is distasteful. That is unacceptable. They believe in kto kogo. They believe in bezopasnost. Those things affect their whole perception and how they deal with the West. And so they cannot possibly compromise in the sense that we understand it, because they don't see anything positive to be gained out of a compromise.
I think Marco Rubio is a little bit insincere in what he's saying, because it's very
Exactly.
clear what Ukraine would have to lose.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely unclear to me, Ivan, maybe you understand better, what is exactly Russia is there to lose in case of a peace agreement?
Russia actually is going to lose everything, because in the war with Ukraine, Russia put everything on the stakes, because it will be quite difficult for Russian government to persuade their population. Of course, they have a great propagandistic resource, but they always continue to say that the goals of their so-called special military operations, they remained the same. Starting from the start of full-scale invasion, they and recently so-called Russian Minister of Foreign Affairs Lavrov confirmed that goals and Russian requirements to Ukraine remain the same. They want Ukraine to be demilitarized, which means that Ukraine should reduce the number of our armed forces and make Ukraine completely undefendable towards the future Russian aggression, that Ukraine should not be a part of NATO as a defense bloc, which also can defend Ukraine in future for preventing the another Russian aggression, that the major instruments of Russian propaganda should be bring back to Ukraine. I'm talking about the so-called rights of Russian language, the broadcasting in Russian, the influence of Russian Orthodox Church, which they use as a major instrument of Russian propaganda, the Russian culture, which is another instrument of their hybrid kind of influence and the Russian pro-Russian politicians that they should be forgiven, and that should be, and all other stuff like removing Ukrainian troops from the parts of Ukrainian regions which Russia didn't occupy yet, but which they've included into their constitution as part of Russian territory, like the Donetsk region, the Lugansk region, Kherson region, and Zaporizhia region. Russia doesn't control all of those territories which they've put in their constitution, and so they've put everything. And if Russia will not achieve those goals, it will be harder for Putin, for Russian propaganda to sell this to their population, because they've militarized Russian population over these goals. They've increased anti-Ukrainian and anti-Western and anti-American opinion in the population, and they will of course, in case they will accept any other conditions, for instance, Ukraine not to be demilitarized, they will have to go and to sell and to say to their population that, okay, guys, when we attacked Ukraine, its army was like 200,000 people, and now Ukrainian army is 1.2 million people. We achieved and before that Ukrainian army had only Soviet weapons and some more than the Ukrainian weapons, and now they've got HIMARS systems, so they got Abrams, they've got Bradley, they've got F-16s, but we achieved all goals of our so-called special military operation. It's nonsense. So I think that this will probably launch some specific processes inside the Russia, like actually, Jonathan, like we're after the recalling Soviet troops from Afghanistan, when population didn't understand what this war was for. Why Soviet Union lost dozens of soldiers in Afghanistan? What they defended there? What was the reasons for this war? If Soviet Union didn't achieve any goals in this war, actually they achieved nothing. And the same situation would be with Ukraine, obviously.
I would add to your observations there is that based on my analysis and study of the Russian view of U.S. strategy, there was a very high correlation between the growth of Soviet nuclear power and their use of military power to support their foreign policy goals. The more that Soviet military power increased, particularly nuclear power, the more freedom they obviously concluded that they had to use their own military power. But they were very gradually increasing it. First, they started with just in the 50s, conducting war games and threatening to use their military power. In the 1960s, it was mounting logistical efforts and sending advisors to the areas in question. In the 70s, they started sending proxy forces. And then this culminated in 1979, when the Soviet Union had a marginal numerical superiority over the United States. They didn't achieve parity, but apparently they had a marginal superiority. Interestingly enough, that
We lost Jonathan, I think.
Yeah, maybe some problem with connection. Yesterday there were a problem in Europe, in Spain, Portugal.
Yeah, with blackout and
Yeah.
what's remarkable that they say that it was not some kind of terroristic or hybrid kind of attack, but of course they will investigate this issue, the authorities of Spain and Portugal. I don't believe in consequences actually when we face Russia and we see how they are provoking NATO countries in such numerous hybrid attacks. So.
Sorry about that, gentlemen. I was snatched away momentarily by an alien transporter beam.
Okay.
Fortunately, the Space Force was there to block it.
Invite them to the program.
Yeah, really. Welcome back.
Yeah, we'll talk to them.
But in any case, I agree with Ivan that basically, in the same way that the Russians saw their greatest freedom of action when they went into Afghanistan, now it's becoming apparent that Ukraine, the correlation of forces that the previous Soviet leadership liked to talk about, the correlation of forces has been shifting steadily in favor of Ukraine. They are becoming more fully integrated, more fully mobilized. The people are obviously firmly behind their leadership. There's no question about that. And the Russians are only worsening their own problems by continuing to conduct terror campaigns of missiles and bombing against the Ukrainian population. They aren't damaging significantly in any way the Ukrainian military capability. What they are doing is ticking the Ukrainians off and just increasing their determination to fight on. And of course, they're also indirectly ticking off the President of the United States. The more they show their total lack of good faith in seeking a peace, eventually President Trump, especially if he gets that song, make sure he gets that song. If they can do that, he may eventually have what Christians would call a road to Damascus experience, where all of a sudden I see I've been wrong. Okay, these people are bastards, and so therefore, and he, like Jimmy Carter, he will retaliate using means of his choosing and the ones he sees fit, and this will decisively turn the situation in favor of Ukraine, achieving at least an armistice, and possibly also with additional pressure. I'm still looking for that operational surprise involving Crimea.
I was listening in the last few days the channel from Kyiv in the Russian language by the name Freedom. I don't know, Ivan, you familiar with this program? So in this programs, I've discovered very interesting things. One of them, for example, that Japan has provided Ukraine with the new type of detecting equipment which can detect live targets even behind the concrete wall, and nothing can hide them from being detected. Then they showed a Russian new strategy in attacks. They are using now motorcycle attacks. So they have 5-6 motorcycles, and they are running because they believe that unlike horses, motorcycles cannot be shot at, and they can, and they're faster. And also it's more difficult to hit them from drones. And then at the same time, they showed how the drones are, it's like a...
Almost like a video game?
Kind of a video game, yeah. Okay, look at and you can hear how they're talking to each other, Ukrainians. Okay, here's a motorcycle. It's right there. You want to hit it or you want me to hit it? Okay, I'll hit it. Okay, where it is?
Well,
okay, it's done. Who's next?
For the Ukrainians, now it's a game. You're going to have Ukrainian teenagers, just say, "Hey, let's go kill some Russians." Jeez.
Well, you can put 15-year-old kids, and
and they'll probably do it better than the adults.
Absolutely, and so now the Russians show that they have some defense against drone attacks. So the motorcycle, the people, they have some kind of covers over their heads, so so they're being hit anyway, but
Yeah.
not once but twice or something, but they being destroyed, and that's one reason Russia is losing so many people, because they believe the meat attacks with motorcycles or without motorcycles, results are the same. They're being destroyed. I don't know
Well,
what they wanted for.
they're suffering from bureaucratic inertia. It is very difficult for them to radically innovate their strategy in the middle of a war, particularly when you have an authoritarian regime such as Putin's, which punishes any attempt at innovation or changing tactics or being more cautious, much in the same way that Hitler punished his generals, if they deviated from strategy, especially when they tried to deviate from Hitler's no retreat orders on the Eastern Front, as you recall, in 1941 and 42. So it proved to be very costly for the Germans, and it's proving to be the same bureaucratic rigidity is proving to be very costly for the Russians as well.
So I just don't understand why certain American sources of mass information, they're saying how great Russian advantage is and how they are about to penetrate the Ukrainians' defense line. How is it possible? What I see, it's impossible.
Sasha, it's the reason that you have these mass media making these kinds of statements is because they are making snap judgments. Okay, they're operating on a very tight news cycle. Mm-hmm. They do not have time to engage in depth military historical analysis. They do not have time to war game, as certain elements of the military do, to war game through and analyze in depth and draw logical, dispassionate conclusions that are not relying upon what's going to get the ratings, what's going to draw the most attention. So the media tend to flock towards what they believe to be the easiest explanation. But what they do not do, because they do not themselves have an in-depth knowledge of military history, they say that they're obviously completely ignorant of the history of Russia and Ukraine, particularly in the 20th century. They have at best a superficial knowledge of World War II and major wars, but they do not possess an in-depth knowledge, and particularly, in my case, an in-depth knowledge of how the other side sees the United States.
Absolutely.
And it's like I quote the Scottish poet Robert Burns in my book, say, "Oh, would some power the giftie gie us to see ourselves as others see us? 'Twould from many a blunder free us and foolish notion." And unfortunately, now the American intelligence community, to its credit, does have a system of study for analytic tradecraft rules, which try to avoid what I call the four sources of error in indications and warning, why intelligence fails. And they tried, and I pointed out that although the intelligence community can avoid some of these sources of error through training and study, they can't avoid all sources of error on a consistent basis every time. The four sources of error: the enemy, the analyst, the system, and the policymaker. These are what I call the occupational hazards of the intelligence profession. You can't avoid them all, and you have to be aware of that. Fortunately, the U.S. intelligence community does have a self-correcting mechanism, but it takes time, and it takes consistency and effort, and always being vigilant and aware of the potential flaws of your own analysis. The Russians have no such system. And so they potentially, that is a very big advantage if properly exploited. And right now, like I said, one of the reasons that I applaud Ivan's bringing of this music video, is that this is something that a message that is not disinformation. It is not disinformation. It's a call to action. It's basically a wake-up call to the president. And hopefully that wake-up call breaks through, breaks through the misperceptions of his advisors and his misperceptions and the misperceptions of certain media. And Sasha, just as a parenthetical note to you, stick around after our broadcast today so I can give you an update on certain very positive developments.
Yeah.
And I know you've got other things to do. You've got other things being much closer to the action than we are.
That's okay. Ivan, I would like to know if you heard yesterday there were a communique from Poland and Baltic republics about much higher alert, of which they have to be mindful of Russian provocations, perhaps even invasion or partly invasion. And I'm wondering, how serious is the threat of Russia to European, especially NATO nations, when they were taking, 8 months they were taking Avdiivka. So how credible is this?
Actually, what Russia was not able to achieve in Ukraine, they probably will be able to achieve while attacking the Baltic states or Poland, because why they can take Avdiivka and for so long and other Ukrainian territories so fast, because Ukraine is fighting Russian since 2014.
That's right.
More than 10 years, Ukrainians are fighting Russians. During this time, we've got a lot of veteran soldiers who achieved the battle experience. We've upgraded our armed forces, and thanks to the support of Western allies, we've got new equipment, Western equipment, which Ukrainian soldiers, according to the feedback from NATO instructors, they use with quite a great mastery. They use Western equipment, and they study really fast. And so Ukraine actually was prepared, and our soldiers had that necessary battle experience. That's why it's not Ukraine who needs NATO, it's NATO who needs Ukraine, because in case of full-scale conflict with Russia of NATO, Ukraine is the only country who actually has experience of successfully fighting Russians and defending the territories from Russian invasion. Of course, by paying our lives, of course, by losing square kilometers. But according to NATO estimations, before NATO forces would be able to regroup and strike back and just sustain the Russian invasion, Baltic countries already would be occupied. And then just imagine the situation when Russia occupies Baltic countries. There is some kind of stalemate, and NATO forces block the further advancing of Russian forces, hopefully block further advancing of Russian forces into the Western Europe, into Poland, into Germany. And then NATO and then Russia arrange so-called referendums on the territories, occupied territories of Baltic states, where the majority of population with the Russian rifles behind their back just vote for joining Russia, like Russia did in occupied territories of Ukraine and in Crimea. And then Russia says it's our territories, our historical territories. We've put them in our constitution. We just can't leave those territories, and you must just, hey, NATO, just go back from those territories. And then step by step, if such option now would be allowed Russia to, such trick would be allowed Russia to do with Ukraine, like accepting the occupied Crimea, recalling occupied Crimea by United States, officially accepting legally accepting the occupation of Crimea by Russia, except an occupation of Lugansk, of Donetsk region, of Zaporizhia, of Kherson. It would be a Pandora box which would be opened. That the next would be, it will be not, probably it will be not attack towards Ukraine, it will be attack towards Poland, Baltic states, with the same trick. If this trick was successful first time, then obviously it should be continued, and by such kind of tricks, Russia will expand their empire, which are goals of Putin, to expand the borders of Russian empire. Of course, by losses of dozens of Russian soldiers, by losses in economy. It's really a great price for a normal democratic country. But Russia is a despotic country. It's not a democratic one. It's okay for them for such losses. They don't consider any losses in the people, in their population. They consider people as the resource. They will mobilize people on occupied Baltic states and make them a part of Russian army. They will put those special forces behind their backs, which will kill those who are turning back, or who is not, who doesn't want to advance towards on the fortified positions of NATO. Like everything they are doing in Ukraine, they will do the same. And this situation is quite realistic to happen, because it's happening already in Ukraine. And just wanted to add, Sasha, that the situation is actually a little bit strange and difficult, because from one point, of course, Europe, Ukraine, President Trump, United States, they want to finish this war as soon as possible, to prevent further losses of Ukrainian lives, probably of Russian lives. It's make no sense for Ukrainians. To prevent economical losses, because this war actually is bad for all areas of economic except of military manufacturing, which is growing. But in case this war will be ended in Ukraine, that means that Russia would immediately start preparing for the next invasion. If this war would be ended with any favor to Russia, without any significant losses to Russia, then it will mean that they will immediately start preparing for the next war. And this next war will be against, probably it will be not against Ukraine. It will be probably against the NATO, against the Baltic states, against the Poland. Probably it will be a kind of hybrid invasion, probably not by Russia, but by puppet Belarus forces, which say Russia. It's not Russian forces. It's like Belarus forces, just arranging some kind of military trainings or special military operation, or we occasionally moved to some part of Poland or Baltic states. We just get lost. We don't have GPS. We get lost. What Russian captives were saying after the start of the invasion. We were on some military trainings in Belarus, and then we've got lost, and that's how we've appeared in Ukraine. Some problems with GPS, they will do the same thing.
Very good analysis, Ivan. I mean, I do not disagree one bit with the projection of what Russia would do should it get any kind of favorable result in Ukraine. Fortunately, the European Union has declared that the sanctions will continue until and unless Russia completely withdraws from Ukraine. So that's one thing. And President Trump is showing increasing indications of being so dissatisfied that they will walk away from the ceasefire talks, and a strong implication that he will impose further sanctions on Russia and raise the level of pain. While that does not necessarily have an immediate effect on the battlefield, it certainly will affect Russia's ability to conduct offensive operations and support its offensive against Ukraine in the coming months. And if Ukraine is able to husband its resources, carefully watch, keep their own counsel, don't give any indication that they are basically they can, if necessary, feign weakness, show weakness on the surface, but in private, then be willing to throw that decisive counterpunch, which will not only throw the Russians off balance completely, but also lay the groundwork for the recovery of Crimea and lay the groundwork for at least an armistice in Ukraine's favor, not Russia's. And if you can get the Russians to a point where they withdraw, they declare victory and go home, that's the best possible outcome. Oh, we accomplished the objectives. We have eliminated fascism from Ukraine. Okay, we'll have Victory Day. We'll have it on our own territory. Thank you very much. Excuse us while we go lick our wounds and recover for the next decade or so from the economic dislocation and political upheaval that will result within Russia. Have a nice day. So it's just
a great scenario, Jonathan. I would love it will happen.
Oh yeah. Well, there's always a scenario which you should strive for, which defines your conditions for victory. And Russia retreating behind its own borders and having to cope with economic dislocation and their own problems for a decade or more, fine, we'll take it. And in the meantime, Ukraine builds up its strength, and hopefully, with the other NATO members, persuades, if not the current Trump administration, hopefully the successor administration, that Ukraine really belongs in NATO in order to maintain the peace. And it's not written in stone.
We here in Ukraine have a nice slogan for Donald Trump, because he's, as we see by his rating decrease, that his America Great Again, Make America Great Again, is not working well. Another variant of slogan for him is Make Russia Small Again.
I think that's a good one.
I think this
Make Russia small again. Okay.
Yeah, will work even better, and it can be achieved easily. Actually, it's not a great deal to make Russia small again.
Well, the easiest. Here's the beautiful thing, Ivan. The Golden Dome project, where you remember, President Trump has declared he wants to get rid of all nuclear weapons. Okay, great, idealistic goal, but how do you do that? You have to make nuclear weapons, nuclear missiles in particular, impotent and obsolete. You have to develop a near impenetrable ballistic missile defense. How do you do that? Well, his Golden Dome has the goal of creating that impenetrable defense, but the only realistic way, as I've discussed before, is you can't do it with satellites, just with satellites. That's a big waste of money, it creates a lot of junk, and it's a very unstable situation. Upgrade the Space Force, which President Trump created in his first term. Upgrade that Space Force with a space fleet provided by Elon Musk with his Starships and his Falcon Heavies and Falcon 9s. Have the Space Force upgrade with laser weapons and other types of directed energy weapons that would be placed on those Starships and placed in orbit. And you would have Space Force Guardians manning those ships and creating the seal for the Golden Dome, making the ballistic missile defense near impenetrable, not even worth attacking, which is the goal. You render them obsolete, and at one stroke, with an asymmetric response, you have neutralized the one thing that makes Russia, China, and North Korea significant powers in their own belief, make their nuclear missiles arsenals obsolete and useless, and they have been effectively reduced to the level of minor powers.
Well, thank you very much, Jonathan, for your opinion. Ivan, thank you very much for today's program and for wonderful song, which will get around. I will try my best. And with that, thank you, our listeners, and we'll see you Friday, same place, same time. Slava Ukraini, glory to
God
you.
bless America. Yep.
Героям слава. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye, everybody.